Good morning and welcome to Sunday Soul Day, weekly fuel for your mind, body, and soul. Good morning, Alli. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning, Damesha.
I am thrilled for today's topic. Alli and I, as you know, we interview incredible guests, but we also like to talk about different topics that come up with our clients, with our friends, family, as well as just within our own partnership. And so we thought today it would be really fun to address the topic of feedback. And so feedback is a fundamental aspect of growth and development, applicable not only to professional settings, but also personal lives, whether interacting with partners, friends, family, or inside of a workplace. Feedback is so important because it serves as a constructive tool for nurturing relationships, fostering understanding, and facilitating positive change. In this kind of quick, we're trying to do this pretty quickly, but in this quick segment, we'll explore kind of like the importance of delivering feedback, how to actually deliver it, and then some kind of tips that will hopefully help you in all of your relationships, whether they be professional or personal. So I thought, Alli, you could kick off the first question and then we'll just take it from there.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. What does effective feedback look like in a partnership, and why is it crucial for the success of the business?
Yeah, well, I would say like when I think about feedback, especially like within our partnership, right? I'll just use our partnership as an example. I would say there's several things that you want to keep in mind. You want to always be kind. That's the very first thing. You don't want to make it about the person, but more about the challenge that you're tackling. You definitely want to be very specific. I think one thing that I have always struggled with when people give me feedback is they will just make statements, but will not provide any specific, point to anything that actually supports that feedback. I remember I had a boss, won't say which company, obviously, but he used to just make statements, and 9 times out of 10 they were actually untrue, but they would just be his interpretation of whatever he was feeling, and it was really like counterproductive. It wasn't productive to me at all, like because I was always trying to get better, and when I would ask for specific feedback, he would say I was difficult to give feedback to. Go figure. So I always say you want to always be specific. Constructiveness is key. You want to also, like, timeliness is key. I think when we let things linger like way too long, it really we let things fester, and so I think it's really important to handle feedback like in a timely manner. I haven't always been great at that, like especially when I was younger. I used to kind of prefer not to be confrontational, and so I think one thing that I've learned over the years is just being timely with my feedback, and then also like creating a space for two-way communication, and not where you're just talking at the person, but also like being an active listener. Again, I always say be kind, be respectful, and then also just remember empathy. And then one thing I try to always do, because my life is very goal oriented, is just center things around goals in like the larger picture. So that's what I would say. What
Yeah.
about you? What would you add?
Oh, those are great. And I try to keep in mind that when you're in business, you're producing something, right? And for our product to be successful, I believe that it needs to come from a place of love, creativity, excitement, passion, meaning. And
Yeah.
in order to do that, I believe that there needs to be a safe space for the partners to give each other feedback.
Yeah.
Solution oriented, no blame and shame, kind of similar to what you were saying, coming from a place of need. Using I messages, I statements, similar to what I would tell partners in an intimate relationship, that when you use statements like I need, I want, here's what's coming up for me, it's disarming. It allows the other person to be responsive rather than defensive. And
Yeah,
then
I love that. Can we touch on that a little bit more? Because I think like that's such great advice. Like, I love, the I statements, but then also too, like coming from a place of not from a story that you're telling yourself, but really asking for clarity. That's the one word I forgot to mention, is just, making sure that when you're going in for feedback is asking for clarity before believing that to be true.
Yeah, no,
I love that.
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also in terms of using iMessages, also using, and I had said solution oriented or what you need instead of what you don't need, similar to what I would provide in parent education and coaching. Tell your kids what you need them to do. Create a mental schema for your child of what you want them to do in order to provide hope, and also direction, because otherwise we're saying, hey, don't jump on the couch. And then the child doesn't know what to do. Similar in a partnership, hey, I need you to do X, it provides that mass in the mind, especially for someone like me who is visual, to be able to know what's needed of me.
Yeah,
And it
exactly.
offers hope instead of helplessness.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I use, and this is for leaders or managers in the workplace, is the feedback sandwich approach, which is also the positive, negative, positive feedback approach. So if you've used that, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, it's basically where you start with positive feedback, then you insert constructive feedback again with those action items, and really examples too, because I think like for me, I'm a visual person and I need to also understand like why you're giving me the constructive feedback, and not just again making a statement. And so I think and then after the constructive again with positive, that kind of feedback sandwich again, as to Allie's point, it disarms the person that you're giving feedback to, and then the action items are just extremely important because it allows people to know like what they need to do or how they can even do it. And one way that I try and do is like two-way communication, as opposed to me just dictating. And I do this with my kids as well, is I invite them in to give me examples of what they think the action should be.
Yeah. And then on that same note with talking about you said you're a visual learner, or I'm a visual learner, figuring out, I know it's not our job to take care of our partner, whether it's in a business relationship or an intimate relationship, but it's helpful and it's kind to meet our partners where they're at. Kind of, Damesha, you've done a great job of learning how I learn. And it can be, I think, to me, watching other people have to figure me out, I think can be really difficult and frustrating just because of my learning difference with ADHD. But I think it's very kind and helpful when we can meet each other where we're at. And also, we're going to be in different places based on external circumstances as
Absolutely.
well. And so being able to hold space for each other and be flexible can also really contribute to the partnership, because we're all human after all, and we're all going through, something that nobody else knows about.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into what we wanted to share too around partnerships. So do you want to share, because we recently had a similar situation where I was giving you feedback. Do you want to share kind of your experience there?
Yeah. And so this is regarding when I had a little bit of, I think, a breakdown in communication. And so I think I was going through some personal stuff, and I thought I was remaining professional, and but me comes through. I also don't have a great poker face, and Demisha was picking up on some of that, and I recognize now, after we had had a very personal, intimate, and professional conversation, that I was sort of shifting into victim mentality and not taking ownership over myself, and it was showing in our work together. And Demisha had recommended a book, Extreme Ownership, by Jocko Willink and Leif Beben, and I may have just
Butchered, yeah,
botched their names,
close
but
enough.
it was such a great book on taking ownership over ourselves and taking responsibility, and also the other side of what it takes to be a leader. So it talks about going from blame and the victim mentality into ownership and being solution oriented, and how important it is for each one of us to kind of look within and do what we need to do to be in that space of ownership. So for me, it was getting into journaling again, meditation, mixing up my routine, and not, I was kind of walking through life rather than experiencing the love in life. So I'd gotten into fear, and what I needed to do was shift back into a space of love. And Damesha had provided that space for me. And I really appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you so much for saying that and mentioning that. And I could not agree more with that book. It is so crucial. I see in organizations, especially when you have leaders who don't take ownership or don't own, if something goes wrong, it is disastrous for the organization. And I've been in organizations where no one wants to take the lead or, responsibility for making decisions. And when you're leading people, because again, as a manager, you're always managing things, but you're leading people. So in order to lead people, you need to own the fact that you're the leader. And so I love this book and have recommended it many times over. But what I want to just shout out to you is that you also created a space for me to be able to give you this feedback. And I think it's a testament to our partnership and the way that we are mature and able to communicate with one another, and not take it personally. And also just, again, going back to what we constantly say, just where we want to continue to be 1% better every day. And so I love that you created that space and that you were even open. You didn't have to read the book. It's not like I forced you to read it, but you still did. And so I think to the other component is when you're the person that someone needs to give feedback to, is also creating a space.
On the note of I didn't have to read the book, you also didn't have to, in my opinion, go above and beyond to support me. It is my job to take care of myself. And it kind of reminds me of codependency, where we can, if someone's falling into the mud, we can reach our hand out and help guide them out, which ends up helping the other individual, and then it helps the partnership. But if we reach in and fall into the mud with them, then that's codependency. And the one thing that I found that you did for me, Damesha, is you set very clear boundaries with me. You were willing to help give me some solutions. You also asked me questions to help me find my own solutions, which was empowering for me. It's similar to what I do with my clients. I won't just give them answers. I'll let them dig within to find those answers, because they're there when we're paying attention, when we're in our source of love. But you didn't fall into the mud with me, because that wouldn't have helped the partnership. That wouldn't have helped what we're working on. And I think it could have led to more resentment. So I just wanted to kind of shout out the compliment there, and also how important it is when we do help a struggling partner, that we want to be boundaried. We want to give from a place of love instead of every last bit we have, which can turn into resentment.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Thank you for breaking it down in that way. And I think it's so easy, especially in a maybe husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend situation, like an intimate relationship. It's so easy to want to get in the mud with him. But a lot of times you have to create space, for them to pull themselves out, but maybe, throw a ladder. And so I love that you touched on that. I wanted to talk about the next question that we've had come up is, how can partners navigate the balance between direct and assertive while maintaining respectful and collaborative atmosphere? We kind of touched on that a little bit, but I thought it would be great to kind of go through just some key points for anyone who wants to take notes or have some key takeaways. But I would say, if I could answer that really quickly, is just focus on the issue, not the person. Use I statements. Be clear and direct within your communication. Actively listen. Like, try to create a space for them also. A lot of times, like, people will feel silence, and what I do is I try and like take beats in between to make sure that I'm not talking over the person when they're communicating. And this is something I've had to practice, because a lot of times when we do listen, we're like waiting, for our next turn to talk. And so what I've done is just really worked on creating a space and taking a beat and a pause. So like, even if there's dead space in between, I don't need to fill it, and the other person doesn't need to fill it. And then I would say, like, seek to win solutions, to Alli's point. Obviously, always maintain professionalism and respect, for your partner, if it's a family member, friend, as well as a colleague. And then just encourage open dialogue. Like, one thing I did with Alli is I asked her like really powerful questions. We don't have to go into the details, but then I asked to meet with her again after she took time to journal or think about it, and just really reflect. And I think creating that space, it really created an opportunity to have that open dialogue and really allow her to process. The way that she works is she likes to process things. And I know a lot of people like this. And a lot of times when we want to hurry up and get to the solution or hurry up and get to, the solve, it really does a disservice, to the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Those are all really good, helpful nuggets. And I just want to add a little bit to
Yeah,
that.
please.
So for the respectful piece, we touched on this a little bit. I think it's so important that we keep our side of the street clean. Take inventory on what's really going on inside of us through journaling or meditating, talking to a trusted friend, coach, therapist. Because then once we know what's coming up for us, then we can work to communicate assertively. And then one thing that I talk with my clients about in intimate partnerships is the idea of assertive communication versus passive or aggressive communication, and the impact that the aggressive and the passive or even passive aggressive communication can have on the relationship, that it can have that kind of impact on a partnership, a work or professional partnership as well. So with aggressive, the partner can be left feeling intimidated or threatened or in fear and voiceless. With passive, so if the person communicating is passive, they can build resentment, and it can also lead to passive aggressive, or swinging to the other side and becoming more aggressive. You hold it in so long that you kind of explode, or it comes out in an unprofessional way. And so being in that assertive, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean space, is kind of the goal, what we're looking for when communicating effectively in our partnership, in order for it to be respectful and collaborative.
Yeah, and I think too is like one thing that I've picked up on over the years that's been really helpful as a people leader is I pay attention to non-verbal, communication as well, like people's body language, their tone. And if that tone gets to a kind of disrespectful place, like I'll end the communication. Or if the body language, you can tell someone is closing in, they'll start, kind of their body language will completely shift. That's not a time to push, that's a time to allow that person time to process and reflect. So I think also paying attention to those things are really important.
Yeah. I think that's so great that you touched on body language. For me, I feel energy, especially when I'm face to face, like with my clients, and I know when to kind of push and when to hold back. And I think that in work partnerships or intimate partnerships, again, sensing, if you can, the energy and also those nonverbal cues as well. It's really important.
The other question I wanted to tackle is just like unresolved conflict and breakdowns in communication can have a significant negative impact. And we touched a little bit on that. But in a partnership, that includes a partnership like Alli and I, relationships, friendships, family ships is what I like to call them. What are some, I guess, like impact that can have, like when you have those breakdowns in communication? I'll let you dive in and then I'll.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Resentment can build,
Mhm.
breakdown in the work ends up being impacted, the quality of the work. Remember, if we're doing something creative and from a place of love, that's where we have that motivation and inspiration, and the breakdown starts to happen when we're resentful, We start to do things from a place of fear or less motivation. For me, what ended up happening when I was having a breakdown is I started to create stories in my mind based on my own past or my own personal current struggles. And then if I'm not aware of them through journaling or meditating or talking to someone trusted, then it shows up in my work. And maybe even, and I shared this with you, Damesha, that I started to place some of that onto you or onto our work rather than onto myself. And so it, like I'd said, it shifts things kind of from that place of fear, from a place of fear and instead of a place of love.
Yeah.
And it can impact
That's
the
actually
entire.
really, really good. I had just posted something about, the stories we tell ourselves and the assumptions we make. If you don't come from a place of curiosity, and that's really how I approached Alli, was from a place of curiosity. I didn't believe everything I was seeing. I just knew that there was a shift and I couldn't, label everything that was happening, because as I explain to my clients, and also, in this particular partnership, I'm like, Alli is the expert of Alli, and I am the expert of curiosity of Alli. And so I'm going to come and I'm going to ask a lot of questions to get the best understanding I can, and then just support where I can. But I'm not going to take on what she's going through, meaning like, I don't have to accept the energy that, she or anyone else brings, like my energy is my energy. And so I constantly cleanse my energy so I don't wear anyone else's energy. And so I think, that's one thing that I would just add, is just around the curiosity component, is just getting really curious about what's happening with the person. You don't do these things or communicate, it really, like, the erosion of trust happens. The relationship, it can result in, partnerships dissolving. Like we've seen that time and time again, and also the tension and stress. Like I don't, if you followed us long enough, it's like, I don't like to carry anything. So I release everything as much as I can to God. It's so important for me to, not carry that tension and stress. And I think when you have unresolved communication, it really does create that for you. And like Alli said, the reduction of productivity, and just missed opportunities for innovation, and just growing, or if it's in a family relationship, just fun times, so I think it's so important to communicate where you can. And in some cases, when people are not in a space to communicate in a healthy way, you don't have to communicate. You don't have to communicate in that moment until someone is able to communicate in a healthy way. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, no, I agree completely.
The other thing I was curious about is like how we can share, just any kind of strategies around open and honest communication. So a person can address any issues constructively. I know that we've already given some, but if there's, a few more that we want to add.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we did touch on some of those, but it's, again, this was kind of feedback I got from you and also from Extreme Ownership, is that we each need to, within the partnership, we each need to know ourselves. We need to engage in self-care. We need to engage in de-escalation when we're stressed. We need to practice being present and have a support system. Similar to how we would tell someone in an intimate relationship or relationship with their child, you must take care of yourself first in order to be effective or of service to anyone else. And then once you know yourself and your needs, you can ask for your needs to be met directly, assertively, and confidently.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I would just add, in case people are tuning in midway, is just establish clear communication channels. I always try and like set the tone so people aren't like caught off guard. That's one thing I did with Alli. Like I sent her a note prior so then she wouldn't be caught off guard when we got on the call and she's like, wait, I didn't know this was going to be about me. I think that's really important. Encourage transparency, active listening, again, promoting constructive feedback, leading with examples, and also by example. So you can't be asking a partner for things that you're not willing to give yourself. And so I think it's really important make sure that you're checking yourself before you wreck yourself. And so,
Yeah,
you
that's
know, so
check yourself before you wreck yourself.
exactly, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I think too, like just again, creating that safe space. And then one thing that Allie and I weren't doing, and I'll just touch on this, is we have regular check-ins now. We were communicating so much like via text, you know, and I think things were getting lost in translation. And again, with her ADHD, I try and work as effectively as I can. That still allows me to show up as my best self, but also support her, you know. And so I know like she needs like certain things, not to, you know, come across like in a text like where it's like 50 things I'm wanting her to do. Like I try and limit it to like 2, you know, so then she's like, okay, I'm going to knock out those 2 things and then I'll send another text. But what we now do is we do regular check-ins. I think that has been really effective. So we do once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what I was just going to mention, is how that breakdown, I think it's important that we don't have shame when there is a breakdown in communication, because there's silver linings. There is that breakdown to break through. And in things kind of having a little bit of a struggle, it allowed us to, what you said, regroup. And find some solutions. And so for us, like you had mentioned, weekly meetings. Also, if you don't have a breakdown, maybe do some preventative measures, such as having the, you know, check-ins weekly, or even just a happy hour type thing to with just each other, just to kind of see how each other is doing and kind of have a little bit of community together. And within the meetings, talking about, here are some things that are going well, and like you had said with the sandwich, and here are some things that we can work on. I think using the word we helps us to remember that we are teammates and not opponents. And I say that with couples, you know, when they're in those fights, is how do we get you guys back to a space of being teammates instead of opponents? You're not against each other, you're working with each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would add too, is just remember to celebrate the small wins, especially in a partnership. Like we have so many small little wins that, you know, will go unnoticed if you're only focusing on the thing or the negative. You know, we had just talked about a guest about this who will be airing in a few weeks, but I think it's so important to check your own lens, you know, so you're not only focusing on the problem or the issue, but also like all the things that are going right, you know, and make sure you touch on those things, so then more of those things can happen. and then also, you know, while focusing on the issue, making it the issue and not the person. And
separating the person from
yeah,
the problem, or the problem from the person, externalizing the issue. I love that. It's great.
And then respecting differences. Like I love that Allie and I are so different. And I think that's why I work to support her where I can, you know, while also showing up as my best self, you know, in every situation, because I love that she has strengths that I don't, and I have strengths that she doesn't. You know, it's a complementary partnership. And so I think like even in intimate relationships is really respecting those differences. Like, you know, what I think kills a lot of relationships, you know, besides unhealed trauma, ego, but it's also expectation, you know, and not and expecting that person to be like you or to do what you do in certain situations, and not respecting that they're going to be different. They're going to show up different at any given moment, you know? So I think that's been really helpful for us too.
Yeah, I think so too.
Amazing. Well, this was awesome. We'll be doing more of these where we pick a topic, or some of our guests have even asked us to talk about certain topics. So if there's a topic that you want us to address, feel free to DM us or email us at sundaysoldaypodcast@gmail.com. But we hope everyone has a fantastic Sunday. Allie, before we hop off, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, no, I think that everything we talked about was really great. The only last thing that I would mention is that when we're talking about cultivating a place of trust and mutual respect, one of the things that I've appreciated with us is that the opening up to the level that's appropriate for what's going on, and also professional to the circumstance. I think when we show a little bit of our humanness, or tell the partner, or even the leader telling the staff, hey, I struggle with this, or this is something I've had, it helps people to feel like we're all human, and then that we are all here together. And then I think, again, it shifts us from that place of fear into that place of love, and provides a culture for everyone to respect each other and to feel like they can be themselves authentically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it takes like a certain level of emotional intelligence to do that. And so I think the best leaders that I've ever worked for, again, they start with themselves and they have really high emotional intelligence. And the ones who don't really know themselves, their emotional intelligence is less. And so, and it just needs a little love, but I think too, like, the best leaders ask for help, so then they can become better, so
putting their ego to the side and coming with humility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
oh my gosh, this has been such a fun talk.
I know, I love this. I know, we absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for joining, and hopefully you got some great nuggets out of this. Please comment below any takeaways that you guys have. Tell a friend about our podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed, and have a beautiful, beautiful Sunday.